Good afternoon. My name is Alex Klippenstein, and I'm a four-year philosophy major. However, the 2 years studying philosophy here at CMU and the 2 years previously at Brandon University has led me into the exploration of concepts both philosophical and theological. I have increasingly learned that while theology is not something that can be studied in isolation from the broader, more abstract questions of philosophy, neither is philosophy something unconcerned with the existence of God or with living an ethical life. To quote a popular religious philosopher, John D. Caputo, philosophers and theologians are slightly unstable types, people who have been knocked off their pins by such questions, who have been drawn into an exploration of the inner and outer space of our lives. Each proceeds with a wary eye on the other, ranging over much of the same territory, God and ethics, our origin and our destiny, sometimes jealously and combatively, sometimes cooperatively, conducting a kind of lover's quarrel over the ages. As a philosophy major, I was introduced to the world of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, learning such things as the good, the virtuous life, and the golden mean. While these are all philosophical principles that attempt to explain some truth about the world, they are also principles that understand truth to be in accordance with goodness and with something that is eternal. The good is a divine form that represents the pure essence of that which is visibly good on earth. The virtuous life is the pursuit of happiness for the good of the individual and for the greater society. The golden mean is the appropriate balance of the passions and of the intellect. Living in goodness, virtue, and balance can be paralleled to the Christian life of living in righteousness and truth. From the start, the line between philosophical ethics and theological doctrine became blurry. Later, I was brought into the world of Kant, Mill, and Descartes, learning such things as the categorical imperative, the utilitarian calculus, and cognito ergo sum. The categorical imperative states that our individual actions reflect the potential for these actions to be universalized, that we are only to do what we believe is appropriate for all of society. The utilitarian calculus is the principle of the greatest distribution of happiness for all, a complex and dynamic calculation that strives for both the highest levels of human happiness and the greatest distribution of such happiness. Cognito ergo sum is the concept that our thinking determines and establishes our being. It is Descartes' famous, "I think, therefore I am." What is important in these three concepts is that they move beyond a philosophical exploration of the real towards a theological address of the potential, and from the theoretical towards the practical. Kant is concerned with action that is not only rational, but ethical. Mill is concerned not only with happiness, but with its fair and appropriate distribution. Descartes is concerned not only with thought, but with thought that establishes the self. Taken together, these principles unite the philosophical conception of the human, the goals and purposes held by humanity, and the ethical means to attain such goals. Can this not simply be thought of as a strange form of theology? My philosophical journey did not stop in the Enlightenment, but moved into the sphere of postmodernity. Here I was introduced to such figures as Nietzsche, Derrida, Deleuze, and Foucault, and such concepts as the will to power and power's inseparable relation to knowledge. I learned that any theory of morality is not entirely stable and unchanging, but shifts from period to period, that there have been different understandings of goodness, and that any attempt to create a universal theory of goodness is to reject its changing external and historical conditions. Here it became less clear where the question of God fit in. However, it remained apparent that goodness as a value was something that remained relevant to philosophy. I learned that while truth is often accompanied by power, the realization of such a relation is necessary to find new ways of living differently. The fundamental question of Deleuze is not, how do we live, but rather, how might one live? Awareness and consciousness of ethics, multiplicity, is crucial to a life lived ethically. The philosophical deconstruction of terms such as the good and the true serves the theological purpose of approaching such terms anew and with new insights and realizations, thus planting new convictions and beliefs. However, the integration of philosophy and theology involves more than just thought and contemplation on the issue. It also involves belief in systems that are both philosophical and theological. Faith is not some blind force that proceeds at the absence of reason. Similarly, reason is not a framework that excludes the possibility for faith. Caputo states, "Religious people hold their faith to be the most precious thing they have, and well, they should. But everything depends on understanding the faith that is in you, on thinking it through and thinking it out, in dialogue and with everything else that God has given us. This is why theology proceeds without philosophy at great personal risk to itself. To speak about my faith is not only to speak about my spiritual encounters or those of a particularly religious nature. To speak about my faith is to speak about the entire range of my experience from the moment that I began to reflect upon the fact of my own existence. Though my faith is shaped by the commitments that I've made to those around me and to God, it is also shaped by the reasons behind those commitments, by the contemplation involved in coming to those commitments. My faith is a combination of both belief and rationale, where neither exists entirely without the other. Increasingly, I have found no contradiction in thinking philosophically and in thinking theologically. The two not only shape each other, but share certain goals and principles. Religion is ethics. It is doing your duty where the voice of duty or conscience is taken as the voice of God. This does not mean that God can be simply slotted into an ethical formula which philosophy ultimately lays claim to. Rather, religion is in fact a very embodiment of an ethical ideal, such that its doctrine and theology make up a way of seeing the world that is fundamentally good and good-producing. The Christian worldview is that the natural world is an expression of the divine life in an objective manner. In the material objects that make up the natural world and human culture is the expression of the divine life in cultural and historical life. This is a very Platonic understanding of Christianity, with the universal and divine forms embodying their particular and worldly manifestations. However, rather than drawing the assumption that religion proceeds from philosophical thought, one might also entertain the idea that Socrates, the figure of Plato's writings, followed a religion not altogether different from Christianity. That in fact it was his belief in the universal good and in the one God which got him executed by the state in the first place. Socrates was not one to blindly accept the religious customs of the day. Instead, he asked deep and probing questions about the gods and about religion, not to question or critique its motives, but to find new ways of thinking about the gods that could have some basis in reason. This type of Platonic questioning has been exemplary to the way that I have come to my own faith. I remain in the position of continually asking questions, not because I doubt the truth of such claims, nor because I expect to come to actual answers. I ask questions primarily to deepen my convictions, to root them in a deeper understanding of who God is and what the Christian life means. They are not so much questions of doubt as they are of humility. It was Plato's belief that the more we know, the more we realize that we do not know. The more that I come to know about the world and about God, the more that I come to realize lies beyond my comprehension. To conclude, I have majored in philosophy, both out of a respectful understanding that there is much beyond me, and out of a curiosity and wonder at the world that remains undiscovered, the places that remain unexplored, and the thoughts that remain unformed. Caputo states, "Philosophy and theology are for wounded souls. Indeed, those who take up the study of any of the humanities, of language and literature, history and art, philosophy and theology, or any of the natural sciences have been pierced to the heart by something precious, beautiful, deep, and enigmatic that leaves us reeling. For we live and breathe in the tremulousness of our lives, exposed to the questionability of things, made vulnerable to love's wounds, visited in the night by questions of elemental power, shaken to the core by voices that will not be stilled. This has not only been my experience of philosophy, but has been my reason for taking it on. While it is easy to push aside certain questions about life, death, and the world, they keep coming back to shape the inner recesses of my soul. For this reason, it was not out of mere interest that I stumbled upon Plato, Kant, and Nietzsche, but out of necessity." Thank you.